The studio lights were blinding, the kind that made even the most seasoned politicians sweat under their collars. The audience was electric, waiting for sparks to fly. It was supposed to be a friendly debate, a meeting of minds. But the moment Jill Biden leaned forward, her eyes locked on Senator John Kennedy, the atmosphere shifted. With a sly grin and a confident tone, she delivered a challenge that made the crowd gasp. "Senator Kennedy," she said, her voice sharp and deliberate, "you seem to think you're the smartest man in the room. Why don't we settle it right here? Let's take an IQ test. Unless, of course, you're afraid." The audience erupted, half in cheers, half in shocked murmurs. Cameras zoomed in on Kennedy, who leaned back in his chair with that trademark Southern drawl painted across his smile. He didn't look rattled. He didn't even blink. Instead, he folded his hands on the desk and stared at her as if she'd just handed him a gift. "Ma'am," Kennedy finally said, his voice slow and steady, "where I come from, we don't measure a person's worth by how quick they can solve a riddle. But since you're mighty insistent, I've got something better than a test." The studio fell silent. Kennedy reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope, yellowed at the edges, the kind that carried weight far beyond words. He held it up for everyone to see. "This here," he continued, "is a letter. Not from me. Not from any staffer. It was written years ago by someone who knew what real intelligence looks like. Someone who understood character, not just clever answers on a page." For 36 long seconds, he let the envelope rest in his hand. Jill Biden shifted uneasily, her smirk beginning to fade. The audience leaned forward. The tension was unbearable. Then, with a slow tear of paper, Kennedy unsealed the letter. His voice lowered as he began to read, and every word hit like a hammer on stone. The letter wasn't about numbers or test scores. It was about leadership. It was about honesty. It was about the kind of wisdom that can't be measured on paper. It spoke of sacrifice, of humility, of people who had walked through fire not to prove they were clever, but to prove they were worthy of trust. As Kennedy read, the studio grew still. Jill Biden's confident posture began to crumble. She looked less like a challenger and more like someone staring into a mirror she didn't expect to face. The crowd, once buzzing, was now silent, hanging on every word. And when Kennedy finally folded the letter and slipped it back into the envelope, he looked her in the eye with a quiet finality. "Mrs. Biden," he said gently, "intelligence isn't something you wave around to belittle folks. It's something you use to lift 'em up. That letter reminded me, and maybe it'll remind you, that wisdom without humility is just arrogance dressed up in fancy words." The audience erupted, but this time it wasn't cheers of spectacle, it was applause that shook the room.